Why did forks used to have only two prongs? Look at any fork from the 1600s or 1700s and you'll notice something weird. Only two prongs. Sometimes three, but never four. The modern four-pronged fork didn't exist until the 1800s. That means people spent 400 years eating with a worse fork. But here's what's even crazier. Forks themselves were controversial. For centuries, using a fork was considered sinful, unnatural, and even effeminate. Real men ate with their hands, or at most a knife. Forks were seen as pretentious, foreign, and feminine. In fact, when forks first arrived in Europe from Byzantium, a Byzantine princess brought one to Italy in the year 1004. The Italians were horrified. The church called it an affront to God. They said God gave us fingers, so using a fork was rejecting his design. When the princess died shortly after from plague, they said it was divine punishment for using a fork. This basically killed fork adoption in Europe for 300 years. People genuinely believed forks were evil. It wasn't until the 1500s that forks slowly started coming back. But even then, only the wealthy elite used them, and they were still just two prongs. So why only two prongs? Because of how they were made. Early forks were carved or forged from a single piece of metal. Splitting metal into two prongs was hard. Splitting it into four was even harder. The metal would crack, break, or bend too easily. Two thick prongs were strong, four thin prongs useless. So for 400 years, people just dealt with it. They'd stab food with the fork, then use a knife to push it onto the prongs. It was basically a food spear. Then in the early 1800s, metallurgy got better. Steel production improved, and manufacturers figured out how to make thinner, stronger prongs. Suddenly, four-pronged forks were possible. And the difference was immediately obvious. Four prongs meant food didn't fall through. You could scoop, not just stab. And the prongs were close enough to actually hold things. By the 1850s, the four-pronged fork became standard, and suddenly the two-pronged fork looked ancient. But it took 800 years to get there. 800 years of religious opposition, cultural resistance, and bad metallurgy. All for a utensil we now use without thinking. So next time you use a fork, just remember, people once thought this was the work of the devil.